For most people, we can agree that our actions directly correlate to the amount of money that we make. Now, usually that's in the form of trading our time or work for money. Now, I want to introduce something to you, something that most people have probably heard of just walking around the streets, but not many people know exactly what it is. And that's equity. Now, equity may sound like some sort of weird, obscure maths term or an artificial sweetener maybe, but for an investor, equity is the gateway to break out of the regular way that most people make money. And when done correctly, you guys might even be able to exchange and build a lot of wealth without anything in return. So what is it? Put very simply, equity is the value of an asset minus the amount that you owe to it. To dive deeper, I have to default to my fellow boss, Guan of Investmentor.
What is equity? In really layman's terms, equity is just purely the value of the property minus your loan. Okay? Very simple. So let's take, for example, you got a property worth $1 million, okay? And you owe to the bank $600,000. Your $400,000, that's your equity, okay? The difference between the loan and the value equals equity. The key question here is more so, how do you use equity to generate wealth? Okay, we live in Australia. I'm sure there's tons of people out there that are sitting on loads of equity at the moment, but the problem is that they're not doing anything with it. So how do you then convert equity into cash? In this country, there's only two ways to convert equity into cash, okay? The first way is the most obvious way, is you just simply sell the property. Pay the bank off the $600,000, and now you're left with $400,000 in cash in your pocket, minus capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is taxed at the tax rate of your income tax, which is the highest form of tax in this country. Okay, you're talking about anywhere between 30 to 50% tax on this amount that you cash out. Okay, that's the first way. The second way of converting this equity into cash is through what we call a refinance or an equity release. Essentially, you go to the bank and you say, hey, Mr. Bank, my property is worth $1 million. Can you please revalue my property and give me a new loan on my current property? Okay, and the bank is going to say, okay, customer, I'm going to see if you can service a loan of $1 million. And if you check out, if you can service that loan, the bank is going to re-give you the loan. They're going to give you a new loan on your property. Now, here's the trick. You're owing $600,000 on the property, okay? But they're going to give you a loan for $1 million. So what happens to that $400,000? This $400,000 now becomes liquid cash that they just deposit into your bank account. Okay, they deposit into your bank account. Now, obviously, this $400,000 that is deposited into your bank account is not free either. You've got to pay something to get it. And what you pay is interest. Every dollar that you spend out of this equity, you got to pay interest on, which is around 2 or 3% at the moment, right? But if you do a calculation, that is still far cheaper than selling the property and paying capital gains tax. So it's the lesser of one of two evils. Now, you don't get a free lunch here, nothing's for free, but it's a better way of accessing your cash for two main reasons. Number one, it's cheaper. Number two, which is much more important, you still got the property, you haven't sold it. So the property is still in the background growing wealth for you. So in another 5 or 10 years, you can do the whole thing again, it take more equity out, right? You haven't lost the goose that's laying the golden egg for you. So that's the main thing. Now, one other thing I've got to add to this is that when the bank does a refinance on the property, they don't give you the entire $400,000, okay? They give you 80% of the $1 million. So if you go 80% of the million, which is around $800,000, you go 800,000 minus 600,000. In this scenario, you'll be able to take out approximately $200,000 in equity. This is how equity works. A lot of people got to understand this because equity is the biggest source of wealth in this country. If you have a look at where 90% of people's wealth comes from, it comes from equity in their house. It doesn't come from them saving, it doesn't come from their jobs or their careers, it comes from the growth on their properties. And we've got to be smart about how do we use this to continue that cycle of wealth creation. So what can you do now? You've got another $200,000. So you could consider taking maybe $100,000 out of that and using it as a deposit to buy another property. So let's say you can use it as a 10, 15 to 20% deposit to buy another property for, let's say, $500,000, $600,000 or $700,000. Now you've got two properties in your portfolio growing in wealth for you, doing the same thing for you. So if the market was growing at a rate of say 5 or 6%, since you've got 2 properties now, the rate of the growth is now doubled for you, okay? So this is how you can use to expand and keep on building your property portfolio. And it's how a lot of people do it. They use the equity out of their property to then purchase their second and their third investment properties. Now, think about that, guys. How long does it take you to save up 100 or 200,000, right? Australia has just gone through the biggest boom in the past 33 years. Across the board, our median values have gone from 600,000 to $1 million on your average home. That's a $400,000 increase on someone's standard house. How long does it take you to save up even 100,000? And how long has it taken the property market to do so in the same time frame? Think about that, guys. And that's how powerful this can be for you if you know how to make it work. You're not going out into the market to buy 4 properties or 3 properties in one hit. You're spacing it out over a 10, 15 year period, right? I mean, very few people in this country can go out and just dump 3 deposits on 3 properties and be able to service the loan on all 3 properties. That's not possible unless you're already extremely wealthy. What most people do is they plan out the purchasing over the next 10 years. They spend probably 2 years, 3 years building up to the next one. And the way they do it is over that time, the income steadily increases, right? And if they do it correctly, they can also focus on paying down the debt on the current properties. So they have more borrowing capacity for the next one. Now, it's a fact that the average person in this country probably can't go beyond, say, 3 or 4 investment properties. Unless you're earning $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, the average person can't possibly do that. However, if you have a look at statistics, very few people even have just 1 or 2. And it's a fact that a lot of people can do more than 1 or 2. You can probably do about 3 or 4 if you plan it out properly over the next 10, 15 years and work with the right people. Get a really good mortgage broker working for you. Get a good accountant trying to figure out ways to lower your tax position. That way, you can actually plan out ahead and not be caught out by that.